Dan Hodges joins me now. Dan, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, I mean, once again, we get a week on from what we said last week about the confusing messages coming out of Downing Street, you know, the confusing aims even coming out of Downing Street. And what do we get? We get Keir Starmer yesterday appearing before a committee on the same day as Nigel Farage is talking about lawlessness and criminality and the things that people really worry about. And he says this, right, when he's asked about whether or not there's anywhere to put illegal migrants.
Just a big pinpoint before. What other accommodation precisely are you planning to take over to provide temporary accommodation for families?
Oh, there's lots of housing in many local authorities that can be used, and we're identifying where it can be used. But I mean, look.
Sorry, could you give us? Have you got any examples you can give us?
No, but I'll write in and give you details.
Because I could say certainly in a number of our local authorities, I'm already picking up from around the table, there isn't a lot of spare housing available. If there were, councils would be able to be dealing with it by now.
Well, exactly.
I don't know what he meant by "well exactly" at the end. I presume he meant that his initial statement was completely incorrect.
I mean, I tweeted about this yesterday. Yeah, I mean, we've seen some ridiculous stuff from Keir Starmer since he became Prime Minister. But I mean, I literally do not understand what he thought he was doing there. And you could actually see in Meg Hillier's response the complete incredulity from her and the other MPs. That firstly, that the Prime Minister seems to think local authorities have huge amounts of spare housing just lying around. Right. But secondly, then to think that it's a good idea in front of the nation to say we've got all this spare housing, and what we're now going to be doing with it is we're going to be putting lots of asylum seekers in it. Now, I mean, firstly, he's obviously factually wrong about the state of the housing stock. Secondly, politically, it is absolutely insane in the current environment to be going around saying, oh, guess what? We've got all this, we've suddenly found all these spare houses and we're going to give them all to asylum seekers. But I mean, I don't understand what he thought he was doing. I mean, I've spoken and written a lot about how Keir Starmer does not have a political brain, right? He just isn't good at politics. But you don't have to be a master politician to understand firstly, what the facts are in relation to housing in this country, and secondly, what the public mood is in relation to housing. And I cannot think of a statement from a modern Prime Minister that has demonstrated just how so instinctively out of touch they are with the country they're supposed to be governing. I don't know what he thought he was doing or saying.
But is he the victim of some kind of misinformation campaign inside of Downing Street? Do people inside of Downing Street feed him the wrong information? I mean, how would he even if he wasn't Prime Minister, surely he would know that there's a massive, waiting list for housing in this country. Robert Jenrick tweeted about it and said there's 1.3 million people waiting for, affordable housing in this country, what you might call council housing of one kind or another. Everybody knows there's a shortage of housing. I mean, that's why he keeps telling us he's going to build more houses. Why would he say it?
I think there's a couple of issues here. I do think, and we keep saying this about this, this whole never hear Keir thing. Yeah. But I do think we are increasingly seeing a situation with Keir Starmer where so much of his focus, by his own choice, so much of his focus is on international and foreign affairs. And we can debate how good he is at that, but he at least seems to be across foreign affairs. But when it turns to domestic issues, he just doesn't seem to have a clue. He just doesn't seem to have a clue, a proper focus. I've seen some people saying, why was he so poorly briefed for his appearance yesterday? And I'm sure in the next couple of days, we'll get the normal excuses about he was dealing with some sort of global international crisis. But you shouldn't need to be briefed if you're Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, A, to understand there is a chronic housing crisis at local authority level, and B, that if there is spare housing, the priority has to be to provide that housing for people from within those local communities, not to prioritise asylum seekers. And the thing about that clip that struck me was just that it wasn't what he said. Well, obviously it's what he said, but it was also the way he said it. Yeah. It's this casual, oh yeah, no, don't worry, we've got loads of housing. What planet is he on? I mean, it's just, it's staggering. And, you know, I heard from a couple of Labour MPs yesterday. Labour MPs are just not going to put up with this for much longer.
No.
I'm telling you, I don't care about he's got 170 majority with 3 years out for election. I've been saying this for a while now.
Yeah.
The patience of Labour MPs is starting to run out with Keir Starmer. And this sort of stuff, because this is not some sort of abstract issue, this is the sort of issue they go home to their constituencies and people say to them, hang on a second, my sister, my cousin, you know, my friend, they can't get on the housing ladder. You know, they can't get decent council housing. And here's the Prime Minister saying this. You know, this Keir Starmer is not going to be Prime Minister for much longer unless something seriously changes in Downing Street, unless he really gets his act together. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
No, I think you're right. But I think there's definitely something to the Epping story. Last night in Diss as well in Norfolk, there's a little uprising there because of a hotel that people are not very keen on, which is now being pumped full of men only. It used to be a sort of family hotel for migrants, and they were okay with that. But the women and children seem to have been moved out, and now they put a load of men in. And I think if he doesn't grasp that, I was talking to one of the mothers down in Epping, and I said, what message would you have to kids? And she was like, tell him to come down and see us. Tell him to come and look at what we're going through, what the community is saying, you know, why we feel the way we do. You know, come and talk to us. And that's all she wants. She was like, we don't want to have trouble. We don't want people coming down here and causing trouble. We don't want so many police to have to come. We just want to talk to the Prime Minister and try and make him listen to us. People feel like he's not listening.
Look, I mean, I have to say I completely agree with that. I mean, and I don't just agree. I mean, I agree with it in a broader political sense because of the political optics of what Keir Starmer should be doing. I'm increasingly coming to the view that, as I said, I think part of it goes back to the amount of focus that he's placing on international affairs.
Yeah.
I think somebody needs to grab hold of Keir Starmer and drag him back into the real world. I think his age should take him down there. I think they should grab him, take him down, because there's a whole debate going on within Downing Street. There are some of his senior advisors who, in fairness, are saying, we have got to grip these issues. Yeah. I mean, I've written about it today. There are other advisors who are saying, no, we mustn't play into sort of the Nigel Farage reform, right-wing agenda. Let's talk about other issues.
That's not going to work.
Let's talk about school class sizes and
breakfast clubs.
Breakfast clubs, exactly. Stuff like that. Somebody has to grab Keir Starmer by the scruff of the neck and say, you may not like it, but this is the country you're Prime Minister of now. Yeah. This is what ordinary people in your country are becoming increasingly concerned about. And you have got to get to grips with it. Because, again, as I've written today, whatever you think about Nigel Farage and what he says about these issues, he comes out and speaks about them in a way that clearly resonates with a lot of people. Yeah. He is effectively speaking for Britain on a lot of these issues. You've got Keir Starmer, who, as we saw, he gave one speech on immigration in which he used quite a punchy phrase about being an island of strangers. Yeah. He stood by that phrase for about four weeks, then did some emotional interview with his mate Tom Baldwin, in which he basically emotionally completely rejected everything he said. Yeah. If Keir Starmer can't even give a speech on these issues and stand by it, what hope do we have of him actually being able to solve them? And it's like, as you said, I think it would be good for Keir Starmer to go down and listen and be exposed to and speak to people at the sharp end of what is happening with this. It is becoming a crisis. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I mean, he hasn't yet found the answer. I mean, they put out a statement today saying that as of tomorrow, gang leaders, corrupt officials and companies selling small boat equipment are going to be basically targeted. They're going to be sanctioned. They're going to have their assets frozen. as of tomorrow. And again, you know, he puts out these statements. Yesterday he put one out about how he was solving the water crisis, which actually got community noted by Twitter, because it said, actually, you know, pollution's got worse. You know, they can't keep punting out these statements which are completely wrong. People just see through them. Last night he put one out about, you know, the football regulator, which, you know, if you read the, you know, and I know you can't just judge it from social media, but there's not one congratulatory mention. Everything is, you know, you're an idiot. What do you think you're doing? You're ruining the country. You know, why are you talking about football? Stop trying to be working class. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on.
You're talking about the football regulator. Last week, I wrote about this last week. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, the second most important political figure in the country, stood up at the Mansion. It gave a speech to the Mansion House, obviously a major annual economic speech, one of the most high-profile economic speeches the Chancellor gives every year, and she literally said, "Under this government, we have been stabilising the economy, and we have put debt on a downward spiral." Now today, literally, we have the latest debt figures which show debt is soaring. Now, I don't understand. Again, I literally don't understand what Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and the government think they're doing. They are treating the public like idiots.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know,
and people are getting sick to death of the lies, because that's what they're being called. People are saying, you're telling lies, you're deliberately misleading us, we're not having it.
But this is the key thing. All politicians are, to use that phrase, economical with the truth.
Well, yeah, that's different.
We know that. Exactly.
That's different.
But there is a difference between that and the Chancellor of the Exchequer standing up at the Mansion House and saying, under this government, debt is falling, when a week later the official figures come out and debt is actually rising.
Right.
And the point is this: it's indicative of something. The reason why people like Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are telling these what are just simple lies is they don't know what else to do.
Right.
They
and
do
that is
not
a terrible,
have,
and that's a
they
terrible
do
indictment.
not have a policy prescription for these problems. So all they're doing now is trying to create this alternate fiction about the country the country they're governing. But the problem is the people who vote for them actually live in this country. Yeah. You know, they actually have, to use that sort of phrase, they have lived experience and they know what the reality is.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and the government have got to start to engage with the Britain they are actually governing, rather than the Britain in an ideal world they'd be governing, or the Britain they think they're pretending to govern.
Yeah. Or the
It's
Britain
not
that their special advisors tell them that is where everything's all going really well, and his only problem apparently, which he said again yesterday, and we'll play the clip in a second, is that he hasn't communicated his successes well enough. Well, I don't think there's anyone in the country that would ever categorise that as his major problem. Have a look at this. This was him being quizzed on his achievements. No. Can't do it. Anyway, he ended up saying, as a result of what was the best thing he thought he had done, or what was the best moment, and he said the best moment was walking into Downing Street. He literally, he's moved on from, I think, what he said last time he was asked that question when he was over in the NATO summit, when he said, that was definitely when I got the 2 million extra appointments on the NHS, and now they're 3 million, and now they're 4 million. Now it's gone back to when I walked into Downing Street on day one.
But also, you know, he was in front of the committee yesterday. That was an opportunity for him to actually, you know, broadcast his achievements and highlight his supposed achievements.
Right.
And what did he actually do? What did he actually do? What was the headline that came out of his appearance? We've just focused it. He sat in front of the committee, and he came up with the absolute rubbish about all this free housing stock that he's going to put asylum seekers in. Now, I've heard a lot of this sort of, you know, blame the aides, blame the advisors, blame how he's been briefed. That's not on the advisors. That's not on the aides. That's on him. At the end of the day, the buck stops with him. And at the moment, as I say, Keir Starmer just doesn't seem to understand or recognise or see the country he is supposed to be governing. he's on seemingly in another world, and it's just not, as I say, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable politically. It's not sustainable for the government, and it's not sustainable for the country.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable for him either, as you say. I mean, you know, I've been saying this for a lot longer as well, that he's not going to make out that he's not going to last the term. He's going to self-implode. It seems that that's the only way he can go. It's absolutely horrendous. I can't believe it, actually, how bad he is. I literally can't believe it.
I genuinely could not believe what I saw yesterday with the thing about the council houses. And as you could see from the other members of the committee, they couldn't believe it either. And actually, there was a moment at the end where, it was almost like you could see it. It was like Keir Starmer, finally the clogs are whirring. It's like, oh, what have I just done?
Right.
But you can't afford to do that when you're Prime Minister.
It's sort of Prince Andrew levels of delusion. I don't think that went quite well, you know.
I mean, but what was he trying? I mean, what was he trying to say in his own mind? What was he trying to say? We've got all this wonderful housing, and we're putting asylum seekers in it.
Yeah.
It's just mad.
I know. It's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Listen, Dan, I can't even predict what's going to happen next week, because with every week that passes, I get even more surprised. But there we are. Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. Thank you very much indeed.